With a new home base at the Moore Park Entertainment Quarter, the 2022 Veterans Film Festival is offering up an international lineup of films about the multi-layered experience of war and the bravery, tragedy, and honor of fighting men and women around the world. Chairperson and Executive Director of the festival is Warwick Young OAM, a man who comes to the role with a long history of melding veterans issues with the regenerative power of storytelling and creativity. It's such an honor to talk to you, Warwick. Welcome to Screen Watching.
Thanks, Simon. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mate, give us some insight into why this position, fronting the Veterans Film Festival, is a good fit for you. It's the latest in a long line of appointments and I guess, initiatives that speak of your dedication to the cause. Would that be true to say?
Yeah, look, the way it came to me was purely through happenstance. I was, I've been working in the film industry for a very long time, and initially as an actor, and then I went to after study directing and did my master's in directing there as well. And the film that I did for my graduation piece did really well, and it traveled the world quite well. It got into a few festivals. It got into a lot of festivals. It won some really nice awards, and it was through people noticing that I was, or hearing that I was also a veteran of the Iraq War, that I was approached, asked if I would be initially on the committee of what was then called the Veterans Film Fest. It is still the Veterans Film Festival, but it was a committee as a not-for-profit. And I said, sure. And then almost immediately they asked me to be the president, because they didn't have anybody on the committee at the time that was a filmmaker and a veteran. And which speaks to a lot of what I suppose the purposes of the festival is. So I agreed to do that, and it was an interesting journey for me in the first instance, because I'd always kept both sides of my life very separate, primarily because there was always, I suppose, I wouldn't call it a stigma, but there was just seemed to be a sense that how could you be an artist but also a soldier? And that was really only in Australia, and it wasn't until I was in America and the UK with my film, and people found out that I was a veteran and I'd been an officer in the Australian Army, that I realized that they really value it. And it's a funny thing here in Australia, we have a bit of a cringe around our veteran community, insofar as we think that they come from a certain mindset, that they're very rigid, and they don't have a lot of creativity, and also when they leave the Defence Force, there's something wrong with them. They're broken, and that's pretty unique to Australia, So I think it sort of culminated at the right time for me, because there was a couple of things that were happening at the time. My film had done really well. I was getting some, really good opportunities for my next feature film and for what I wanted to do with my own career. And I remember I went into one of the state agencies, the state funding bodies, and there was a program that they had for emerging filmmakers, and they said, hey, listen, I got round to the three interviews, 3 callbacks. We got to the very end, and they said, look, we love the project. We love the story. We love everything about it. But what diversity group do you fit into? And I went, and realizing I'm white, male, and heterosexual, I was thinking, wow, okay, what am I going to say here? And I went, I'm a veteran. And at the time they said, oh, they don't count. Yeah. Now they weren't being mean. They weren't saying that to be nasty. What they were saying is, on this list of all the diversity groups we've got, veterans aren't listed. And I literally walked out of the meeting, and I was thinking, that's not right.
Mm.
Like, the fact that we have a society that values diversity, that puts a premium on making sure that the smallest minority groups have a voice, is actually provided by the people that defend the democracy that we live in.
Mm.
The people that have said, I'm prepared to put my life on the line to protect our way of life, and yet they don't get a position at the table when it comes to cutting up the pie. And I thought that was not okay. So all of those things started to come together for me at the same time. Yeah.
I'll jump ahead of my questions a little bit here, because your answer speaks specifically to, I think, what you're doing with the Screen Warriors initiative in conjunction with AFTRS. Give us the rundown on what that is and how you'll judge its success.
Well, that comes back to, I'll jump back to, I'd just come back from the Beverly Hills Film Festival, where my film had won Best Foreign Film. And the head of AFTRS at the time, the CEO, was a guy called Neil Peplow. And when I was doing my master's, he'd been the head of what the department called Screen Content, which is like where the master's students sit. Mm-hmm. And so he took me out to lunch to say congratulations and have a bit of a chat, you know. Not many people know this, but Neil had been in the British Army, and we shared that similar background. Anyway, we were sitting there and, you know, talking about all of the stories from Los Angeles and what fun I'd had and da-da-da-da-da. And I then said to him, so what's going on with you guys at AFTRS? And he said, oh, well, I've just had this industry report delivered. And, you know, AFTRS has a responsibility, because it's a government agency and it's the National Film School. If there's skills gaps in the film industry, they have a requirement, an obligation to try and assist with training people to fill those gaps, right? Mm. And he started lifting off, you know, location managers, transport managers, production managers, unit managers, assistant directors, production accountants, and it goes on. They were all the ones that still exist. The shortages are still there. And I said, well, mate, you know where you get those from? And he went, where? And I said, you get people coming out of the ADF. And he went, you're spot on. You're right. So that's how it started. It was literally that conversation. And that was before I had anything to do with the Veterans Film Festival as well, by the way. So we started putting a concept together, and we packaged it, and Neil had put it in front of the minister, and he finally got it in front of the Prime Minister's office. And this is a great story. I love it. And so Neil and I went down for the final. We had a lunch, not in Canberra, but it was down in Woolloomooloo, with the Malcolm Turnbull's chief of staff. And she's sitting there with us, and we went through the way it's going to work and how it will work. And she went, listen, Malcolm loves this. It's a really great program. He wants to personally champion it himself. Wow. And we went, oh, wow, this is great. So we leave the meeting, do the high fives on the way back to the car. And then a week later, right, I'm in Brisbane, and it was a Friday, and I'm watching in my hotel room. I was just packing my stuff up to come back to Sydney, and there's on the news Malcolm Turnbull getting knifed.
Oh,
by the rest of his party, right? And he's been deposed.
And you're like, Neil, are you watching the television?
No. The phone rings and it's Neil. And he goes, mate, are you watching the television? Yeah. And I went, yeah. He goes, I think we've just been torpedoed. Yeah. Which you know, in a way it did. But look, the idea has had bipartisan support. It's not like one that's just a political issue for one party or the other, nor should it be, you know. So it just delayed us a little bit, but we finally got on track. And then I got involved with the Veterans Film Festival. And fortunately, Nell Greenwood, who is now the CEO of AFTRS, she totally believes in it as well. So the program is basically, you know, like people that come out of the military, you know, particularly ones that have logistics training, or they've been at that sort of senior NCO, warrant officer or sergeant rank. They're used to putting teams together. They're used to getting an organisation and moving it from one location to the next. and they're used to doing it under difficult circumstances when things change at the last moment, which a film set does.
Sure.
And look, it's funny, in the film industry, as you know, we have the call sheet. But if you put a call sheet in front of someone in the military, they go, oh, that's a task order. You've got to have this assets at this location at this time and be prepared to move them to the next location if there's bad weather or something else happens. And in the next 24 hours, we're going to be doing this. And then the next 48, we're going to be doing this. And then the next 72, we're going to be doing this.
The skill set's already there.
The skill sets are already there. So, it's basically taking something, military people didn't know this. I knew this. People that have been in the military and the film industry, of which there's not many, know that those skill sets that they get in the military, which they think when they leave, they're no longer really, who needs them? Who needs those skills,
Sure.
There's very few industries that do. They've got that opportunity, and the film industry also didn't know that. So, really, in a way, I'm just a connector. I'm almost like a job agency, but well, the festival is in part of its charity form, putting individuals together with opportunities in the industry. Look, we launched it about 6 weeks ago. We've had a really good response from people registering for the program. Some are about to leave, some have already left. It looks like we'll have our very first one out on a film set very soon.
Wonderful.
And, it's pretty exciting. So what they do is we've started with unit manager and location manager courses, and they'll do a 2-day course at afters, because the skills that they've got are so similar to what they need in the film industry. It's just about teaching film language, the protocols and procedures, how a film set works. So the first day is really teaching them the language and understanding the mechanism of the beast of a film set.
Yeah, of course.
And then the next day we take them out to a real film set and show them it, and they have a look at it. And then we've had some great response. Well, as we knew we would get, the industry is, particularly in that unit, assistant unit manager locations, just to name two, they're really in a difficult way. And, I'm getting phone calls from people saying, when can we have someone? And I'm like, look, as soon as we've got them ready, because you don't want to have them not prepared and ready, whether that's in having done the little bit of training they've got to do, or their life's not ready for it. They've just got to set them up for this new opportunity. But the good thing about it is, you look at the interim findings of the, and not to want to mention something so negative or dark, but the interim findings into the Royal Commission into veteran and defence suicides. And one of the big things with veterans is they are involved in this big organisation that's got a real purpose and a mission, and which are very similar to what you're doing on a film set. And then they get out, and then all of a sudden, all those people that were around them and that team, that feeling of camaraderie, that feeling of we're achieving something, we're heading in a direction, is gone. And that's one of the most difficult things that they have already shown is people are dealing with. Well, guess what? When we do it, we go on a film crew, that's exactly how it works. And I know every film that I've worked on, when you finish it, you actually have that post-film blues for a few weeks. So it's giving them something that's very similar to what they're used to culturally, and then putting them in a position where, hopefully in that paradigm where we've found those things are happening, we'll make a change to those lives anyway, for those people that, want to get out of everyone wants to get out of the ADF at some point in time, and get on with a film crew life.
It's a wonderful initiative, mate. Congratulations on it. I want to talk briefly about some of the programming in the festival, and specifically your opening night film, given the very tight grip that Apple TV keep on their premium content. So to get the Australian premiere of Causeway, the new Jennifer Lawrence film, that's a major coup. It's a bit of a statement acquisition, a title that says the new Veterans Film Festival wants to deal with that high end of town and deal in that corporate sphere as well. So is that part of the thinking behind it? I understand it's also a terrific film, of course, but it is a statement piece.
It is a statement piece, but that's more serendipity than anything. Look, it's an international festival. We get great entries from around the world.
Sure.
There's films we go out and chase, and Causeway was one of those, primarily because of its content, and it's about a veteran with a female veteran from Afghanistan, American Army with a traumatic brain injury, who is wanting to stay serving. She wants to go back, which is the character played by Jennifer Lawrence, and continue serving, but she just can't. She's not physically capable. And she goes back to her hometown, and I won't destroy the film for everyone, but it's about dealing with that, that whole process that many veterans face.
Sure.
It's great because it's a female combat soldier, which we've only just started to see in the Western world in the last 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's great because it deals with that adjustment of back to what is normal, what's normality when you've had such a massive cultural shift in your life by being in the forces, but also, you're dealing with a physical and psychological, those traumatic brain injuries are pretty awful. And they're one of the most prevalent ones they get these days because modern body armor and helmets are so effective. The thing that's open is the face, and the shockwave from the concussion, from the explosion, those traumatic brain injuries are actually, it's shaken baby syndrome that they get, because their brain gets shaken up. So look, having that film and being given that opportunity to be the only Australian cinema screening.
Yeah.
Like it is the only Australian cinema screening. So, it says as much about the producers and that film as it does about us, because the reason they made that film is they want to put a spotlight on that. Jennifer Lawrence gave a first-time filmmaker an opportunity to direct it because of the quality of the director and the story, right? It puts a spotlight on the fact that and starts the conversation about these people and that issue. We are exactly the same. It's completely aligned with what the festival's about. It's about starting conversations. It's not a festival that veterans only can turn up to and watch films. Quite the opposite. We want everybody in because we want to start the conversations, because if you have more conversations between a veteran community and the general public, believe it or not, you're heading towards a much more peaceful world than you would expect, because there is no greater anti-war advocate in the world than someone that's seen it firsthand, So, look, we're pretty rapt about having it.
I bet you are.
We're pretty rapt about having it.
Mate, the festival has the Governor General of Australia, the Honourable David Hurley, and Her Excellency Mrs. Hurley as festival patrons, and some very high-profile board members. Let me play the devil's advocate here a little bit, but there's no Australian Defence Force coat of arms on the website. It's not Department of Defence endorsed, as far as I can tell. Is that by design? Does the Army itself have a position on the festival?
They've been great supporters in the past, and a lot of senior ADF officers always come to the opening night and are there. When we were in Canberra, the Australian Defence Force was a sponsor because they used to give us venues and things like that. So it's not really a case of by design or not. We get great support from them and the RSL and from the Department of Veterans Affairs. In fact, it's the Department of Veterans Affairs and Screen New South Wales, the Department of Arts in New South Wales, that have been really dynamic in bringing the festival to Sydney from Canberra. So it's not by design, and it's not by a lack of want to be supported by those agencies. I mean, in the end, we're not a political organisation, so we don't actively go out and have conversations with the government because, that's not what we're about. We're about representing every Australian veteran and every international veteran, But it's great that we get the support from those government agencies and the ADF as well,
Mate, you've all the same KPIs as other festivals, the ticket sales and the sponsorships and social media growth and the kind. There's also and this is fairly unique to what you do, there is an issues-based goal at the festival heart. And things like the Voices of Veterans and the Persona Art exhibitions are key to that goal. You'll be successful in your role if the VFF achieves what?
If the VFF, yes, you're right. We've got to get people in. We've got to get people along. We've got to get people talking. We'll be successful at the VFF, and I will be successful in what I wanted to achieve when I took on the role of doing this. When I'm satisfied that we have actually started to change the conversation in Australia about how veterans are perceived. Now, that's a big ask to put on a little festival. I'm not suggesting that we're going to be the only ones to who will be the litmus paper to test whether that is, but we will definitely the good thing about storytelling and particularly cinematic storytelling is how powerful it is. And if we can demonstrate that we've had a really good following to the festival, that the people have come along, that we've engaged with them instead of banging some drum about just being veterans, but we're part of the wider Australian community, and it becomes normal for veterans in Australia to just be seen as artists or whatever. Australia, it's a funny country. One of the things we do is we talk about a fair go, but we like to pigeonhole people. We like to stovepipe them. And for me, if that conversation starts something where somebody like me, or Warwick Young in 10 years, doesn't think, oh, well, I better not talk about my creative life because the military might not understand that. But actually, funnily enough, it was the creative world that didn't understand the military piece. If we can end that in this country, that's success for me.
Mate, you're well on your way to doing that, and you've put together this extraordinary lineup of films and extraordinary series of events as part of the Veterans Film Festival that does you proud and does the fighting men proud. So thank you very much for chatting with me, and all the very best for the festival, mate. It's been a joy.
Thanks, fighting men and women.
Of course, and men and women, of course, yeah.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.